Ironically, despite the hip-hop community being the driving force behind the Stop Snitching movement, rappers tend to snitch on themselves a lot.
Yo, what's up? It's kwamega, man, from Chicagoland, and I'm pretty sure that you've heard by now, and if you haven't, welcome to the channel. I'm about to tell you 5 arrests have been made in the killing of FBG Duck, the late Chicago rapper who was murdered last year. I believe it was August 2020. And the reason why the case was such a high-profile case, in addition to his notoriety already as a, up-and-coming rapper who was signed to a major deal, but it happened in a very unexpected place. It happened in the Gold Coast, which is pretty much the Chicago equivalent to Beverly Hills Rodeo Drive. It's where a lot of high-end shops are, and it's just the last place you would expect something like this to happen. Really, that's what really made this as high profile as it really is today. So they've made 5 arrests. What we do know so far is that there was a federal indictment. So the feds brought this before a grand jury, and I believe it was, under seal for about a year or so, maybe a little less than a year, but it was for quite some time that the feds were secretly investigating. One thing I do need to stress, though, is that these 5 men who have been accused, they've only been accused. They have not been convicted. So we have to recognize that these 5 men, despite how any of you might perceive them or believe them to be, they have the presumption of innocence, just like every other member of society who is due process. That's just the way due process works. And I'm sure if you had allegations brought against you, you would want a fair trial as well. Now, with that said, we have to keep in mind just the reality of how the media is, or how pervasive and how influential the media is, including social media, and pretty much just the power of the court of public opinion. We definitely got to keep that in mind. And we got to recognize that these young brothers are facing an uphill battle because of that. Now, what are some other things that we know? We know that these 5 young men are facing life or the death penalty. We also know that at least 3 of these 5 young men are aspiring rappers. And this is just a trend that we see, or that we've seen just over the years, where rappers or aspiring rappers, being convicted of murders, oftentimes based off of an investigation that use their own lyrics to bring charges against them. And in addition to that, you have rappers, RIP to FBG Duck, who publicize a certain type of lifestyle, or who glorify a certain type of lifestyle, and who embody a certain type of lifestyle, who end up falling victim to the very lifestyle that they glorified and that they promoted. And then you have other people who fall victim in this other way, in the law enforcement way, through indictments and through, decade-long or lifelong prison sentences. So these are the consequences of being a street nigga and publicizing your involvement with the streets. Like I said in my Salute the Squares video, why would you want to do that to yourself? Why would you want to publicize this type of lifestyle when we have all of these teachable examples going on decades and decades of either people being shot, killed, or locked up for stretches of their lives? Why would you want to continue to do these same things? And look, I don't know what goes through these guys' heads, but What I do want to stress is that despite how the feds might use their lyrics against them, the ones that are rappers, they still have a presumption of innocence. And we're going to have to see what other evidence the feds come forth with. Because, I mean, just using rap lyrics in and of itself, it might be too much of a stretch. We do know, however, that these rap lyrics aren't doing them any favors. That them publicizing their involvement with this set or this gang isn't doing them any favors, and it's only prejudicing them even more. So if we believe that they have a right to a fair trial, they themselves are pretty much undermining their own rights just by glorifying such criminal lifestyles, even if it is fictional, which you would think that they would argue it is. One thing I noticed, none of these aspiring rappers that are charged in this case said in their court hearing, in their arraignment or their bond hearing, I don't really know exactly what type of proceeding it was. It was just one of the initial proceedings in this criminal case. But not one of them mentioned that they were a rapper. They all mentioned, low-level square jobs, if you will. But not one said that they were a rapper. Maybe it's because they're ashamed of what they put out, or maybe it's because they know that what they put out is gonna have a bad impact or a less than positive impact on this case for them. But by now they gotta understand that these songs and these social media posts have been under the scrutiny of the feds for probably a year or more. There's a post recently that I came across that implies that even King Von knew that the feds were coming after him or coming after some of his associates even before he passed.
You pushing it real hard too. I think
I'm working. We ain't letting up. We don't go. I'm trying to go crazy real quick, but the feds come.
What?
Rest in peace to him as well. I definitely wish these brothers a fair trial, because that's more than what so many people on the internet have already wished to these brothers, because it's just the court of public opinion. It's like, oh, you just got to be guilty. Just guilty, without even trying to let the evidence play out, because we got to keep it real. A 96 to 98% conviction rate by the feds doesn't mean that it's a 96 to 98% accuracy rate. There are some innocent men who do get locked up, and I don't wish jail on anybody. So that's definitely something that I am sensitive about, or that I am careful with, because, just seeing people celebrate this, especially at this point, because it seems very, very premature, I just have to add my perspective to the mix, because, you get what you give. So when you wish things on people, you're opening up that door for you to receive what you're wishing upon others. So just something to keep in mind. Let's go through some of the indictment to see exactly what the feds have on the table, and see what some things that they alleged are, just to see it in black and white. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss more of this whole ordeal. Let's just skim over this indictment shortly. I'll drop a link to the article where I got the indictment from for anybody that wants to read it more thoroughly. But one thing you see just at the top is the jurisdiction. The United States District Court, Northern District of Illinois, Eastern Division. That's the physical jurisdiction, the physical locale that the feds are saying they have authority over. So anything that happens within that jurisdiction, if there is a statute written in the United States Code, they're going to say that they have the authority to prosecute that particular statute or that particular wrongdoing. So another thing you notice are the actual statutes from the code that they make reference to in the indictment several times. So Title 18 United States Code, sections 1959 A1, 1959 A3, 1959 A5, 924 C 1A, 924 J 1, and 924J2, I presume. So another thing that you see right under count 1 is that it says the special January 2020 grand jury charges the following. Now, this tells me that either the special January 2020 grand jury is a grand jury that just exists or is named that regardless of when they actually convene in 2020, or that they convened in January 2020 and they had been investigating these guys well before FBG Duck's demise. You could just skim through the indictment and see how many counts they're facing. It's a total of 6 counts, I believe. No, excuse me. 7 counts. So at the end of the indictment, after you go through each count, you'll notice that it says notice of special findings. 1, the allegations set forth in count 1 are incorporated here. 2, the defendants Charles Liggins, Kenneth Roberson, Takalos Alford, Christopher Thomas, and Marcus Smart A, were 18 years of age or older at the time of the offense. B, intentionally participated in an act contemplating that the life of a person would be taken or intending that lethal force would be used in connection with the person other than one of the participants in the offense, and the victim died as a direct result. C, intentionally and specifically engaged in an act of violence knowing that the act created a grave risk of death to a person other than one of the participants in the offense, such that participation in the act constituted a reckless disregard for human life. The victim died as a direct result of the act. D, in the commission of the offense, knowingly created a grave risk of death to one or more persons in addition to the victim of the offense. And E, committed the offense after substantial planning and premeditation to cause the death of a person. So that is what the government is alleging against them as of now. Another thing that I did notice at the top of this indictment is that in paragraph 1, under count 1, it says the defendants and other known and unknown were members and associates of the O Block Street Gang, a criminal organization whose members and associates engaged in acts of violence, so on and so forth. So just the defendants and others, known and unknown. So they have the defendants and they have others as well that are known and some that aren't known in mind. So these others, they have some others who they've chosen not to charge because they know who some of these others are. And they're saying that some of these others are or were members and associates of the O Block Street Gang. So just this statement in and of itself says to me that they're getting some type of cooperation from somebody that they're alleging to be a part of this quote unquote street gang. So another thing we have are recordings from the police scanner radio from that day, August 4th, 2020, which to me is probably the most damning piece of evidence that has been brought to light so far. But this information was known about, I believe, a month before this actual indictment was unsealed.
But there also was a black Ford Fusion that was involved in this with Illinois license plate Boy Young 19386.
Also a black Ford Fusion involved with the plate of Boy Union 19386.
Boy Young, squad, Boy Young.
Boy Young 19386.
What's the plate on that Ford Fusion?
That's Boy Young 19386. Boy Young 19386. And that comes back to us to Carlos Alford from 6820 South Ada, a black 2016 Ford.
Now you see now, you done fucked up, you know that, don't you?
And you have a lot of people on the internet blaming a lot of this negative attention that these guys have gotten on a guy named Boss Top, who's also another rapper from O Block, blaming it on an interview that he did with Panda Boy Films, I believe. And while what he said was ill-advised, in my opinion, if it's true that the grand jury has been investigating them since January 2020, then that would mean that what he said was merely extras and that they already had these guys in their sights.
I don't want to, stir up nothing, but you got any, thoughts, on FBG Duck, any thoughts on him? Did you know him?
Who, Duck?
Did you know him before, everything?
Like that. I don't know. On game. All I know, don't say that shit about Troy or rest in peace, Duck.
You done fucked up, you know that, don't you?
So out of all of the defendants who probably are the most disappointed in themselves or that are the most regretful, I would imagine, is Muwop or Marcus Smart, because he, out of all of the others, was the one who showed the most promise for a lucrative rap career, if you will. He had just been on a national tour with Lil Durk. He had recent videos on YouTube that had been getting some pretty good and consistently increasing viewership, and his Instagram page seemed like he was getting more and more followers and just more and more positive feedback every time he posted a new video. But that's the thing, right? Those very videos, those very posts, those very songs are part of what got him into this mess. So it's just that catch-22, right? He could have been a star, but his stardom seems like it was contingent on him making self-incriminating lyrics. And that's just the bad thing, because we could all presume that had he been a conscious rapper, or had he been making positive lyrics or not making songs about going on drills and killing people, that Lil Durk wouldn't have even brought him onto his tour. Just think about that. In order for him to get that taste of a luxurious life, he had to essentially incriminate himself and help the feds create a case against him. That's just something to think about. Because this young man went from a national tour, probably going to cities and states that he had never been to, being on private jets and just living a lifestyle that he wasn't accustomed to just yet. And now, shortly after coming back to the projects, going back to O Block, just to celebrate with his homies on this new milestone, this new stepping stone that he embarked upon. Shortly after that, he's now in federal custody in a cell, likely won't get bail. So there's a very high likelihood that he won't get to come home at all. And that he went from private jets and rocking stages in cities and states that he'd never been in, back to the projects to celebrate, and then directly to a jail cell. So what is one lesson that we can learn from all of this? Well, besides not using a car that's registered to your name to go commit a criminal act. Besides that learning lesson, one thing I think that we should all take from this is we got to be mindful of the types of messages and the types of songs and the types of things that we publicize, because they can be linked back to us. And let's just presume that all of these young men are indeed innocent, because they have the presumption of innocence, right? So let's presume for a second that they are actually innocent. Well, what does that mean? That means that the feds could build a case against you, even if you are innocent, especially when you make posts and rap music that portrays you in a criminal light. So imagine doing life in prison for something that you didn't do because the feds built a case against you based off of a lifestyle that you portrayed that you really did not live, that you really did not participate in. So imagine doing decades or life, or worse, getting the death penalty, because that is also on the table in this particular case. So y'all let me know what y'all think about this whole situation. I'll try to give y'all some updates because it is an ongoing case. And I want to remind you, these gentlemen deserve a fair trial, no matter what anybody says, no matter how prejudiced you might be against these young men because of because of whatever thoughts or beliefs you have about what they've done or what they're into. They still have the presumption of innocence because everybody is entitled to due process. All right. But other than that, like, comment, share, subscribe, dislike if you feel so inclined. Otherwise, I'm going to holler at y'all on the next one. Peace and love. Kwamega Man from Chicagoland signing out.